I will burn your life to the ground, I whispered into the phone, staring at the photographs spread across my kitchen table. Pictures of my wife, Sarah, climbing into a beat-up Honda Civic. Pictures of her walking hand-in-hand with a man I'd never seen before into the sleepy motel on Route 47. Pictures of them kissing in the parking lot while my 4- and 6-year-old children waited at their grandparents' house, believing Mommy was running errands. The private investigator's report was thorough. Dates, times, locations. 3 months of evidence. 3 months of lies. 3 months of my wife taking our children to her parents' house 90 minutes away, not for family visits like she claimed, but so she could spend her afternoons in a motel room with Marcus Thompson, a married father of 3, whose wife Laura had been my college roommate and one of my closest friends for over a decade. But Marcus and Sarah had no idea what was coming, because while they were busy destroying 2 families, I was busy planning something that would make sure they'd never recover from what they'd done. Some people think revenge is a dish best served cold. I disagree. I think it's best served nuclear. Let me take you back to where this all began, because understanding how perfect everything seemed makes a betrayal that much more devastating. Sarah and I met in 2018 at a mutual friend's wedding. I remember the exact moment I saw her. She was laughing at something the bride had whispered in her ear, and her whole face lit up. She had this infectious energy that drew everyone toward her. We danced that night until the venue staff started stacking chairs around us, and by the time I drove her home, I was already planning our second date. Our courtship was like something out of a romantic comedy. Sarah worked as a part-time graphic designer, which gave her flexibility, but also meant she sometimes struggled financially. I was doing well as a regional sales manager for a tech company, and I loved being able to take care of her. Weekend trips to wine country, surprise concert tickets, little gifts just because. She'd always act so grateful, so touched by the gestures. "You spoil me," she'd say, curling up against me on the couch. "I don't deserve you." Looking back, maybe that should have been a red flag, but at the time, it felt like humility, like she valued what we had. We got married in 2019 in a small ceremony at her parents' property upstate. Laura was Sarah's maid of honor. They become close friends through me, and I loved watching them bond. Laura had been my study partner in college, one of those friendships that transcended any romantic possibility. She was brilliant, funny, and had married Marcus right after graduation. Marcus seemed like a good guy, quiet, hardworking, devoted to Laura. He worked for his father-in-law's construction supply company and was being groomed to take over the business eventually. Our kids came quickly, Emma in 2020, then Jake in 2022. Sarah was an amazing mother in those early days. Patient, creative, always coming up with little adventures for them. She'd build blanket forts that took up our entire living room, or spend hours in the backyard teaching them to identify different types of leaves. I'd come home from work to find them all covered in finger paint or flour from some craft project gone wonderfully wrong. But somewhere around Jake's first birthday, things started to shift. Sarah began complaining about being cooped up and about needing more adult interaction. That's when she started the regular visits to her parents' house. "The kids love spending time with Grandma and Grandpa," she explained, "and it gives me a chance to help Mom with her garden and catch up on adult conversation." Her parents, Helen and Richard, lived about 90 minutes north in a small town called Millbrook. They were good people. Richard was a retired postal worker. Helen had been a librarian. They doted on Emma and Jake, and honestly, I thought it was wonderful that the kids had such involved grandparents. My own parents lived across the country, so Helen and Richard filled that role beautifully. What I didn't realize at the time was how these visits were increasing in frequency. What started as once a week gradually became 2 or 3 times a week. When I'd ask Sarah about it, she'd wave me off. "Mom's not getting any younger, David. She needs help with things around the house. And Dad's back has been acting up. Plus, the kids love it there. They have that big yard to run around in. And Mom always has some project for them." It made sense. And Sarah would come home from these visits tired but happy, full of stories about what the kids had done, what her mother had cooked for lunch, how her father had taught Jake to skip stones in the pond behind their house. She'd show me pictures on her phone. Emma picking tomatoes in Helen's garden, Jake riding the old tire swing Richard had hung from their oak tree. I was working long hours trying to secure a promotion. So honestly, I was grateful Sarah had found something that made her happy and kept the kids engaged. When you're juggling a demanding career and 2 young children, you don't question things that seem to be working. But then the kids started saying things that didn't quite add up. It started small. Emma mentioned that Grandpa had taken them to McDonald's for lunch, but Sarah had told me they'd eaten Helen's famous chicken and dumplings. When I brought it up, Sarah laughed it off. Oh, you know how kids are. They probably got the days mixed up. Then Jake started talking about the nice man who sometimes came to visit Grandma and Grandpa. When I asked Sarah about it, she looked confused. Nice man? I'm not sure who he means. Maybe one of Dad's friends from the post office stopped by. But the stories kept coming. The nice man who brought them candy. The nice man who had a red car. The nice man who made Mommy laugh a lot. The final straw came on a Thursday evening in early fall. I was giving Jake a bath when he looked up at me with his big brown eyes, so much like Sarah's, and said, Daddy, why does Mommy's friend have a different mommy? What do you mean, buddy? The nice man. At Grandma's house. He showed us pictures on his phone of his kids, but they had a different mommy, not our mommy. That night, after kids were asleep, I sat Sarah down. We need to talk about these visits to your parents. She immediately got defensive. What about them? The kids are saying some things that don't make sense. About a man visiting. About going to McDonald's when you said you ate at your mom's. David, they're 4 and 6 years old. You know how their stories get mixed up. Emma thinks every man she meets is either a prince or a monster, and Jake calls the mailman his friend, too. Then let me come with you next time. I haven't seen your parents in months anyway. The panic that flashed across her face was so brief, I almost missed it. That's not necessary. You work so hard during the week. The weekend should be your time to rest. I'd enjoy seeing Helen and Richard, and the kids would love having both of us there. Maybe in a few weeks. Mom's been feeling under the weather lately. She wouldn't want company. That's when I knew something was wrong. Helen was one of those people who'd insist on hosting a dinner party while running a fever. The idea that she wouldn't want to see me didn't ring true. So I started paying attention. Really paying attention. I noticed that Sarah's phone was always face down now. She'd started taking it to the bathroom with her. She'd become suddenly interested in going to bed early, claiming exhaustion, but I'd hear her phone buzzing late into the night. I noticed that the visits to her parents always happened on the same days each week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, which coincidentally were the days she didn't work at the design studio. Most importantly, I noticed the mileage on her car. Sarah drove a white Honda CR-V that I bought her after Jake was born. It was practical, safe, and reliable. And according to the odometer, she was putting a lot more miles on it than a round trip to Millbrook would account for. Millbrook was 87 miles from our house. I'd driven there enough times to know. The round trip should have been 174 miles, maybe 180 if she stopped for gas or groceries. But Sarah was consistently adding 240 to 260 miles on her visit days. An extra 80 miles might not seem like much, but when it happens twice a week for months, you start to notice. When I casually asked her about it, she had explanations. She'd taken the kids to a park on the way home. She'd stopped at a farm stand that was a little out of the way. She'd gotten lost trying to find a new craft store her mother had heard about. All plausible, all reasonable, all lies. The final piece fell into place on a rainy Tuesday in October. Sarah had left for her parents' house that morning, kissing me goodbye and promising to bring back some of Helen's apple butter. About an hour after she left, I realized she'd forgotten her travel mug, the one with Jake's handprints on it that she never left home without. I decided to surprise her and drive up to her parents' house to deliver it. Maybe I'd stay for lunch, spend some time with Helen and Richard, and see what had been keeping Sarah so busy up there. The drive to Millbrook takes about an hour and a half in normal traffic. I made good time, pulling into the Williams' driveway just after noon. Helen answered the door in her gardening clothes, dirt under her fingernails, and a surprised smile on her face. David, what a wonderful surprise. What brings you up here? I was hoping to catch Sarah. She forgot her coffee mug this morning. Helen's smile faltered just slightly. Sarah? Oh, honey. She's not here. We haven't seen her since Sunday when she brought the kids by for a quick visit. The world tilted, but she said she was coming up here today with Emma and Jake. The children are at daycare today, aren't they? Sarah mentioned she had some errands to run in town. I stood there on Helen's front porch, holding Sarah's travel mug, trying to process what I was hearing. Sarah had lied. Not just about where she was going, but about taking the kids with her. Emma and Jake were safely at their daycare center, 30 minutes from our house, while Sarah was, where? David, dear, are you all right? You look pale. I managed to smile, to make some excuse about getting my schedule mixed up, to chat with Helen for a few minutes about how the kids were doing. But inside, my world was crumbling. On the drive home, everything clicked into place. The extra mileage, the mysterious visits, the kids' confused stories about McDonald's and the nice man. Sarah wasn't taking Emma and Jake to her parents' house twice a week. She was dropping them off at daycare and going somewhere else entirely. The question was, where and with whom? That night, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through Sarah's purse. She was in the shower, and her leather handbag was sitting on our dresser, like it always was. My hands were shaking as I opened it, feeling like a criminal in my own bedroom. But I had to know. Her wallet, her keys, her lip gloss, everything normal. But tucked into a small side pocket was a receipt from the Sleepy Inn Motel on Route 47, dated the previous Tuesday. The same Tuesday she'd supposedly spent helping her mother reorganize the guest bedroom. Route 47 was about 40 miles east of our house, in the opposite direction from Millbrook. It explained the extra mileage perfectly. I photographed the receipt with my phone and put everything back exactly as I found it. When Sarah came out of the bathroom, her hair wrapped in a towel, I was lying in bed scrolling through work emails like nothing had happened. "How was your day?" she asked, settling beside me. "Good. Productive. How was your mom?" "Oh, you know how she is." We spent most of the day going through old photo albums. She wants to make scrapbooks for Emma and Jake, something they can have when they're older. The lie came so easily, so naturally. She even smiled while telling it, that same bright smile that had made me fall in love with her at our friend's wedding. Over the next few days, I found myself studying Sarah like she was a stranger. How had I missed the signs? How long had this been going on? And most importantly, who was she meeting at that motel? I considered confronting her directly, but something held me back. Maybe it was a lawyer in me. I'd gone to law school before switching to sales, but I knew that if I wanted the truth, I needed evidence. Real evidence. Not just a motel receipt and some suspicious mileage. That's when I remember my friend Tony from college. Tony Rodriguez had been a detective with the city police for 15 years before leaving to start his own private investigation firm. We'd kept in touch over the years, mostly through holiday cards and the occasional beer when I was in his area for work. I called him on a Thursday evening after Sarah had gone to bed early, claiming a headache. "David Martinez, you son of a bitch." Tony's familiar voice boomed to the phone. "How the hell are you?" "I've been better, Tony. I need to ask you about something. About your work." The tone of my voice must have changed everything because Tony immediately became serious. "What's going on, man?" I told him everything. The visits that weren't visits. The kids' confused stories. The motel receipt. The lies that came so easily to my wife of 5 years. The mother of my children. Tony listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "David, I hate that you're going through this. But if you want to know the truth, the real truth, I can help you get it. It won't be cheap, and it won't be easy to hear. Are you sure you're ready for that?" Was I ready? Ready to have my marriage, my family, my entire life potentially destroyed by whatever Tony might find? Ready to discover that the woman I'd built a life with was capable of looking me in the eye every night and lying about where she'd spend her day? "I need to know," I said. "My kids deserve to know what kind of mother they have. And I deserve to know what kind of woman I married." Tony's fee was $200 per day plus expenses. For that, he conducts surveillance on Sarah's Tuesday and Thursday visits, document where she actually went, and find out who she was meeting. If there was an affair, and both of us suspected there was, he'd get photographic evidence. One thing, David, once I start this, there's no going back. Whatever I find, you'll have to deal with. Sometimes ignorance really is bliss. I can't live like this, Tony. I can't spend the rest of my life wondering if everything my wife tells me is a lie. Okay, I'll start next Tuesday. The next few days were torture. I found myself analyzing every word Sarah said, every gesture she made. When she kissed me goodbye Tuesday morning, promising to tell her mother I said hello, I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled and told her to drive safely. Tony called me at work that afternoon. "We need to meet. Can you get away around 6? My stomach dropped. "You found something." I found everything. We met at a coffee shop downtown, away from both our neighborhoods. Tony slid a manila envelope across the table to me. Inside were photographs, clear, professional quality images that left no room for doubt. Sarah's white CRV pulling into the parking lot of the Sleepy Inn Motel. Sarah walking across the parking lot, holding hands with a tall man with dark hair. Sarah and the same man kissing against the side of a red Honda Civic. Sarah and the man entering room 114 together. Timestamp showed they'd been in that room for 2 hours and 43 minutes. But it was the close-up photograph of the man that made my blood turn to ice. I knew that face. I'd seen it at dinner parties, at Laura's birthday celebrations, at their kids' soccer games. The man my wife was having an affair with was Marcus Thompson, Laura's husband, my friend, Jesus Christ. I whispered, staring at the photos. "I'm sorry, David. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. How long do you think this has been going on?" "Based on what I observed today, they're comfortable with each other. This isn't new. The way they move together, the routine they had, I guess at least a few months, maybe longer." I thought about all the times Laura had called me, upset because Marcus was working late again. All the times she joked about him being married to his job. All the family barbecues where Marcus had been quiet, distracted, checking his phone constantly. He hadn't been working late. He'd been fucking my wife. "There's more," Tony said gently. I followed them after they left the motel. They went to lunch at a place called Rosie's Diner, about 10 miles down Route 47. They seemed intimate, comfortable, like a couple. "Did you hear anything they said?" "Some of it. They were talking about you, actually. And Laura," my heart stopped. "What did they say?" Tony hesitated. "Are you sure you want to know?" "Tell me." "Sarah was complaining about having to lie to you about visiting her parents. She said it was getting harder to keep track of her stories. Marcus said something about Laura suspecting something, that she'd been asking questions about his schedule. Then Sarah laughed and said something about Laura letting herself go after the kids, how she couldn't understand what Marcus had ever seen in her. The cruelty of it hit me like a physical blow. Not only was Sarah betraying our marriage, she was mocking Laura, sweet, brilliant Laura who'd been nothing but kind to her. Laura, who'd been struggling with postpartum depression after their youngest was born. Laura, who confided in me just months ago about feeling insecure about her body, about worrying that Marcus wasn't attracted to her anymore. "I need you to find out more," I told Tony. "I need to know everything. How long this has been going on, whether they're planning to leave their spouses, what they've said about the kids, everything. David, I need to know what I'm dealing with, Tony. If I'm going to blow up my life, I want to make sure I'm doing it for the right reasons." Tony nodded grimly. "I'll keep watching. But David, you need to start thinking about what you're going to do with this information. Are you going to confront Sarah? Are you going to tell Laura? Because once you do either of those things, there's no controlling what happens next." I stared at the photograph spread out on the coffee shop table. My wife's face, radiant with happiness as she kissed another woman's husband. Marcus's hands on her waist, holding her like she belonged to him. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I know I can't pretend I never saw these." That night, Sarah came home full of stories about her day with her mother, how they'd finally finished organizing the guest bedroom, how Helen had taught Emma to crochet, how Jake had helped Richard fix a loose board on the back deck. She was so animated, so convincing. If I hadn't seen the photographs, if I didn't know she'd spent the afternoon in a motel room with Marcus Thompson, I would have believed every word. Instead, I sat across from her at our dinner table, watching her lie to my face while our children chattered about their day at daycare, and I began to plan my revenge. Because that's what this was going to be. Not just a divorce, not just walking away from the rubble. This was going to be an act of utter, strategic devastation. The next few weeks were the longest of my life. I became a master of disguise, an actor in my own tragic play. Every "I love you" Sarah uttered felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Every time she touched me, I had to suppress a shudder of revulsion. The kids were my only anchor, their innocent smiles the reason I didn't just explode right then and there. I needed to protect them, and for that, I needed a plan. My primary goal was twofold: gather enough undeniable evidence for my own divorce proceedings, ensuring I had full custody of the children and a favorable financial settlement, and then deliver the public exposure that Marcus and Sarah so richly deserved. I wasn't just ending a marriage, I was launching a campaign. Tony continued the surveillance. He confirmed more motel dates, more lunches, more casual touches that confirmed their intimacy. He even managed to place a small, legal tracking device on Sarah's car, which confirmed her exact movements on Tuesdays and Thursdays, logging every stop at the Sleepy Inn. This was more than just suspicion now. It was a digital trail of betrayal. He also provided me with an interesting piece of information about Marcus. Apparently, Marcus was under immense pressure at work. His father-in-law, a gruff but fair man named Frank, was nearing retirement and had recently indicated he was considering selling the construction supply company rather than passing it down if Marcus couldn't prove his commitment and focus. This was a detail I filed away for later. Marcus's affair wasn't just a personal failing. It was a professional liability. Meanwhile, I had to keep up appearances. I started talking about a big deal at work, a potential promotion that would require more late nights, more travel. This was a lie, of course, but it served two purposes. It explained my own occasional absences, which I used to meet Tony and strategize, and provided Sarah with more freedom, making her feel secure in her deceit. The more comfortable she was, the less likely she was to suspect anything was amiss. I even started buying her small gift again, things I knew she loved. A new designer scarf, tickets to a show she wanted to see, a weekend spa package for her and Laura. The irony was bitter. I was treating her with a kindness she didn't deserve, all while meticulously building the gallows. She beamed. "You're so sweet, David. What's gotten into you?" Just realizing how lucky I am. I'd say, forcing a smile that felt like sandpaper on my face. And grateful for everything you do for our family. The big gesture needed to be more than just a gift. It needed to be something that would bring all four of us together, something that would showcase the supposed strength of our two interconnected families. A setting where the betrayal would feel magnified when it came to light. I decided on a joint family vacation. Not just any vacation. Laura had always dreamed of taking her kids to Disney World. Marcus had always brushed it off, citing work or expense, or the general chaos of traveling with young children. But I knew Laura's birthday was coming up, and she'd expressed a quiet sadness about missing out on experiences with her kids. One evening, while Sarah and I were having dinner with Laura and Marcus, the conversation drifted to summer plans. "We're probably just doing a staycation again," Laura sighed, looking dejected. "Marcus is swamped at work." Marcus nodded, avoiding eye contact. "Yeah, this quarter's insane." This was my opening. "You know what?" I said, leaning forward, feigning a sudden inspiration. "Sarah and I were just talking about taking Emma and Jake to Disney World next summer. What if we all went together? Split a big villa, share the childcare? It'd be incredible for the kids, and honestly, a lot less stressful for the adults." Sarah's eyes widened. She loved the idea of a luxury vacation. Marcus, however, looked uncomfortable. "David, that's incredibly generous, but—" "Nonsense." I cut him off, my voice laced with false enthusiasm. "Think of the memories for the kids. And it's not like you guys would be freeloading. We just split the big costs, like the villa, and then everyone covers their own tickets and food. It'd be an amazing experience. Laura, you've always talked about taking the kids. This is a perfect chance." Laura's face lit up. "Oh, David, really? That would be a dream come true." "Marcus, honey, what do you think?" Marcus looked trapped. He glanced at Sarah, who gave him a subtle, almost imperceptible nod. A silent, sickening communication. She wanted the vacation. He probably didn't want to risk her getting upset, or perhaps he just couldn't think of a plausible reason to object in front of Laura and me. "Yeah, honey," he said, forcing a smile. "Sounds great. A lot to think about, but yeah, great." My heart pounded with a dark satisfaction. They were playing right into my hands. The next few months were a masterclass in controlled chaos. I handled all the major bookings. A luxurious 5-bedroom villa with a private pool, top-tier park tickets, dinner reservations at all the best character restaurants. I even arranged for a professional photographer to capture family moments throughout the trip. I insisted on paying for the villa up front, telling Marcus and Laura they could just pay us back their half whenever it was convenient. It was another big gesture, another layer of apparent generosity that would make their eventual fall even more spectacular. "You're being so kind, David," Laura said to me one day over coffee. "Marcus has been so stressed lately. This trip is exactly what we all need. Anything for family," I said, meeting her eyes. My own eyes felt cold and distant, even though my smile was warm. I made sure to subtly increase the pressure on Marcus. I'd send him excited emails about the upcoming trip, copying Sarah and Laura. Just confirmed the private chef for our first night. Kids are going to love the custom pancakes in the shape of Mickey Mouse. Or, got us fast passes for all the big rides. Marcus, you'll love the new Space Mountain. Each email a quiet reminder of the impending joint family experience, tightening the noose. Meanwhile, I used the time to set up the legal foundation for my divorce. I consulted with a family lawyer, outlining my evidence. Tony's reports, the photographs, the mileage logs, the motel receipts. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Eleanor Vance, was impressed by the meticulous detail. "This is incredibly strong, David," she'd said. "We have a clear case for adultery, which in this state will greatly impact spousal support and can even be a factor in child custody if we can argue it demonstrates a pattern of deceptive behavior that puts the children's well-being at risk." I focus on the latter. Sarah consistently lied about the kids' whereabouts, dropping them at daycare to meet her lover. That's not just adultery. That's a breach of parental trust. It shows a disregard for our children's emotional security. Eleanor nodded. "We'll build that case. Now, what about Laura? Do you plan to inform her before divorce is filed?" "Not yet," I said. "I have something else in mind. Something that will ensure the maximum possible impact." My plan for public exposure was slowly taking shape. The Disney trip provided the perfect stage, a place filled with magic and innocence, where betrayal would stand out in stark, horrifying contrast. I also knew that a large gathering of Marcus's and Laura's family, including Frank, Marcus's father-in-law and boss, would be ideal for the fallout phase. I started hinting to Laura about a potential surprise celebration for Frank's 60th birthday while we were in Disney. "Oh, he'd love that," Laura exclaimed. "He always says his happiest memories are seeing the kids happy at Disney." "Exactly," I said, a chilling smile playing on my lips. I was thinking of dinner, maybe at one of the nicer resort restaurants. Something with a bit of a view. We could invite his siblings, maybe some close cousins. Laura was thrilled, completely oblivious to the trap I was laying. She took charge of inviting Marcus's extended family, eager to please her father and make the trip truly special. This was the big gesture, a grand, unifying family event that would, in a single moment, be irrevocably shattered by the weight of their deception. I even organized a family photo shoot at one of the most iconic spots in Magic Kingdom, just days before the planned birthday dinner. I wanted pictures of us all, smiling, seemingly happy, a perfect facade that would later serve as a grim reminder of the lies. The irony was almost unbearable. Here we were, standing in front of Cinderella's castle, a symbol of fairy tales and happily ever after, while the very foundation of our lives was about to explode. I remembered a conversation with Tony. "The most potent revenge isn't just about destroying them," he'd said. "It's about making sure everyone knows why. It's about public shaming. And it's about making sure their future is as bleak as you feel right now." I was ready to unleash that kind of revenge. The big gesture of the family vacation, the meticulously planned dinner, the gathering of their entire support system. It wasn't just a vacation. It was a fuse for the bomb I was about to drop. The discovery, for me, was already complete. The motel receipts, the pictures, Tony's detailed reports, the kids' innocent observations. I had known for weeks. But the template asked for the emotional turmoil, the slow realization and confronting doubt. For the purpose of this script, this section details not my discovery, but Laura's discovery orchestrated by me, ensuring maximum impact and minimum ability for Sarah and Marcus to deny their betrayal. This would be the true discovery moment for the audience. The Disney trip began. The first few days were a surreal charade. Sarah and Marcus acted like perfect spouses and attentive parents. We went on rides, watched parades, and ate overpriced theme park food. I observed them, every subtle glance, every accidental brush of hands. They were careful, but the familiarity was there, a silent language only I could decipher. They laughed at each other's jokes with a little too much intimacy, their eyes lingering a fraction of a second too long. It was sickening. My kids, Emma and Jake, were in pure heaven. Their joy was the hardest part to witness, knowing that their world was about to be irrevocably altered by their mother's choices. Laura, too, seemed genuinely happy. She was radiant, liberated from the daily grind, truly enjoying her children and the magic of Disney. Her happiness was a sharp contrast to the cold fury simmering beneath my polite facade. I made sure to capture plenty of moments on my phone, filming candid videos, taking countless pictures. Memories for a lifetime. I'd say, my voice steady, my gaze unwavering as I filmed Sarah and Marcus laughing together, their unsuspecting spouses just feet away. The discovery would occur during Frank's 60th birthday dinner, which I had carefully arranged at the California Grill, a high-end restaurant at the Contemporary Resort with stunning views of Magic Kingdom and Cinderella's castle. It was meant to be a grand, joyous celebration. Frank, his wife Carol, Marcus's 2 sisters and their husbands, several cousins, Laura's parents, who had also made the trip, and of course, Sarah and Marcus, Laura and I, and our collective 5 children. The table was set for 20. The night of the dinner arrived. Everyone was dressed up, The children in their best clothes, the adults looking sharp. Laura looked stunning in a deep blue dress, her eyes sparkling with anticipation for her father's surprise. Sarah, too, looked elegant in a shimmering silver gown, completely oblivious to the storm about to break. Marcus, predictably, was a little fidgety, but I attributed it to the sheer number of relatives. We gathered for pre-dinner drinks on the private balcony, the castle twinkling in the distance. The atmosphere was festive, filled with laughter and cheerful chatter. Frank, Marcus's father-in-law, was beaming, clearly touched by the effort everyone had made for his birthday. He raised his glass. "To family," he boomed, "and to the wonderful people who make it all worthwhile." Everyone echoed the toast. My gaze flickered from Marcus to Sarah, both of them smiling, raising their glasses, utterly convinced they had pulled off the perfect deception. This was it, the moment of truth. I had prepared a small, elegant leather-bound photo album. "Frank," I announced, drawing everyone's attention, "I have a small gift for you. I know you love family memories, and since David and I arranged for a photographer to capture our Disney moments, I thought you'd appreciate this." I watched Sarah subtly tense. She knew I had hired a photographer, but she couldn't know what I'd done with the photos, or which photos I had chosen. She just looked confused and a little wary. "Oh, David, you really outdid yourself," Frank said, taking the album. "Let's all have a look." I had filled the first few pages with lovely, innocent pictures. The kids on rides, Sarah and I with our children, Laura and Marcus with theirs. Frank paged through, oohing and ahhing. The family gathered around, chuckling at the children's expressions. "And here's a page dedicated to the wonderful memories we've made on this trip." I continued, my voice smooth, controlled. "Laura, I thought you'd particularly appreciate this section, a special tribute to strong bonds that tie our families together." Laura moved closer, her face alight with curiosity. She leaned over Frank's shoulder as he turned the page, and there it was, page after page of high-resolution, time-stamped photographs from Tony's surveillance. The first photo was a wide shot. Sarah's white Honda CR-V parked next to Marcus's red Honda Civic in the sleepy and motel parking lot, both clearly identifiable. The next showed Sarah and Marcus walking into the motel hand-in-hand. Then a series of close-ups, Marcus kissing Sarah by the red Civic, Sarah's arms wrapped around his neck, their faces clear, undeniable. There were photos of them entering room 114, then leaving hours later. And, most damning of all, a photo from Rosie's diner. Sarah and Marcus leaning across the table, holding hands, Sarah laughing, head tilted, looking utterly smitten, completely unlike the tired, responsible mother she pretended to be at home. A collective gasp swept through the table. The cheerful chatter died instantly, replaced by a deafening silence. Frank's face, moments ago jovial, turned ash-gray. His hand, clutching the album, began to tremble. His eyes darted from the photos to Marcus, then to Sarah, then back to photos. Laura, seeing the pictures, let out a strangled cry. She recoiled from the table as if struck, her hand flying to her mouth, tears instantly welling in her eyes. Her eyes, wide with shock and pain, fixed on Marcus, who had gone sheet white, his gaze fixed on the album, mouth agape, utterly exposed. Sarah, too, saw the photos, her face drained of all color, her jaw slack, her eyes, wide with panic, locked onto mine. There was no fear, no regret, just pure, unadulterated terror at being caught. What is this?" Frank stammered, his voice thick with disbelief and rage. He shoved the album toward Marcus. "Marcus, what the hell is this?" Marcus couldn't speak. He just sat there, frozen, his betrayal laid bare for his entire family to see. His mother, sitting next to him, gasped and put a hand to her chest. His sister stared, aghast. Laura was openly weeping now, quiet sobs racking her body. She pointed a trembling finger at Marcus. You bastard! How could you?" Her voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the stunned silence like a razor. The air in the elegant restaurant thickened with tension, every eye fixed on our table. Patrons at other tables were beginning to notice, their conversations dying down as they sensed the intense drama unfolding. This was a discovery for everyone else. The slow, painful dawning of the truth for Laura, the shattering of a beloved family patriarch's worldview, the public unraveling of a carefully constructed web of lies. And it was just the beginning. The silence that followed Laura's heartbroken cry was unbearable, thick with shock and disbelief. Then the whispers started, like a ripple effect through the large table. Accusations, questions, murmurs of "no way, is that true?" Marcus finally found his voice, but it was weak, pathetic. Laura, honey, it's not what it looks like. It's a misunderstanding. David, what is this? Why are you doing this? His eyes, filled with panic, darted between me and the incriminating album. Sarah, who had been frozen, suddenly sprang to life. David, how could you? This is insane. You're making things up. She tried to grab the album from Frank's hands, but he clutched it tight, his knuckles white. Making things up? I said, my voice steady cold and amplified by the stunned silence around us. I rose slowly from my chair, my gaze sweeping across every face at the table, from Frank's disbelief to Laura's agony, to Sarah's desperate, trapped eyes and Marcus's terrified ones. Are these pictures made up, Sarah? Is this motel receipt a figment of my imagination? I pulled out a pristine, organized folder from my bag. Not the original envelope from Tony, but presentation I had prepared. I laid out copies of the motel receipts, the car mileage logs from my car's diagnostic system, dates and times clearly correlating with the photographs. Each piece of paper was a nail in their coffin. For months, I began, my voice clear and cutting, my wife Sarah's been lying to me, to our children and to her own parents, claiming she was taking Emma and Jake to visit her mom and dad in Millbrook. Instead, she was dropping our kids at daycare, driving 40 miles in the opposite direction, and meeting Marcus Thompson in a motel room on Route 47. Tuesdays and Thursdays, like clockwork, a fresh wave of gas erupted. Helen and Richard, Sarah's parents, looked absolutely devastated, their faces crumbling as they realized their daughter had used them as a shield for her infidelity. And Marcus, I continued, turning my gaze to him, you've been doing the same to Laura, to your children, to your father-in-law, who has trusted you with his business and his family's future. While Laura struggled with postpartum depression, while she confided in me about feeling insecure, you were mocking her, sleeping with my wife, and risking everything Frank has built. Frank slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing through the suddenly silent restaurant. Marcus, is this true? His voice was a guttural roar, filled with a raw agony that was painful to hear. Tell me it's not true. Marcus swallowed hard, his eyes darting wildly. Dad, Frank, please? I can explain. Explain what? Laura shrieked, finally finding her voice. Her face was streaked with tears, but her eyes were blazing with a newfound fury. Explain these pictures? Explain her. She pointed a trembling finger at Sarah. Sarah, seeing no escape, tried a new tactic. Laura, please. He's crazy. David's been unstable for months. He's making this up because he's jealous. He's always been jealous of your marriage, of our friendship. It was a desperate, transparent lie, but it gave me a new opening. Jealous, Sarah? Or perhaps disgusted. Disgusted that you betray everything we built, and then have the gall to mock my friend Laura, while sleeping with her husband. I turned to Frank. Frank, I'm sure you know this business better than anyone. You know the importance of trust, of integrity. What kind of person lies to their family, their spouse, their children, all for a cheap motel room tryst? Frank's face was a mask of furious disappointment. He looked at Marcus, his heir apparent, with utter contempt. Get out, he said, his voice low, shaking with suppressed rage. Get out of my sight. You are no son of mine. You're fired. Effective immediately. Marcus's jaw dropped. Fired? Dad, please. You can't. Oh, I can, Frank snarled, his voice rising, drawing even more attention from other tables. You think I'll let a man with such a monumental lack of judgment and integrity run my company? You disgust me. The children, sitting at a separate smaller table nearby, had started to cry, sensing the terrible tension. Emma looked at Sarah, then at me, her little face crumpled. Jake clung to his sister. This was the collateral damage, the part that tore at my soul. But they deserved the truth, and they deserved a father who would fight for their stability. And you, Sarah, I said, turning back to my now sobbing wife, I have already initiated divorce proceedings. I have ample evidence of your adultery, and I will be seeking full custody of Emma and Jake, arguing that your deceitful and reckless behavior demonstrates a fundamental lack of judgment as a parent. Your lies about dropping the children at daycare to meet your lover will be Exhibit A. Sarah let out a wail. Custody. David, you can't. I'm their mother. A mother who lies to them about where she's going. A mother who prioritizes a sordid affair over their well-being. A mother who will humiliate their grandmother by using her as an alibi. I glanced at Helen, whose face was a mixture of horror and shame. I will ensure that you have supervised visitation, at best. The children deserve stability, and you have proven yourself entirely incapable of providing it. Laura, still weeping, suddenly stood up and stumbled toward Marcus. She didn't embrace him. She slapped him. Hard. The sound echoed. "You piece of trash," she choked out. After everything we built, you cheated on me with her? My maid of honor. My friend." She then turned to Sarah, her voice raw with betrayal. "And you, I welcomed you into my home. I confided in you. You pretended to be my friend while you were sleeping with my husband. You're a monster." The restaurant manager, having noticed commotion, was now hurrying towards our table, a look of dismay on his face. "Is everything all right here? Perhaps we can find you a more private area." "Everything is perfectly all right," I said, my voice cutting to the manager's concern. "Justice is simply being served, in public where it belongs." I looked at Sarah, then at Marcus, their faces a grotesque tableau of shame and panic. "This isn't about me being jealous or unstable. Sarah, this is about consequences. This is about you two believing you could destroy families with your selfish desires and get away with it. You thought you were so clever, so discreet, but the truth always comes out. And when it does, it burns." I reached into my pocket and pulled out 2 small, neatly folded pieces of paper. "Consider this your final notice." I dropped one in front of Sarah, the other in front of Marcus. They were copies of the divorce petitions already filed, with specific dates and demands outlined. "My legal team will be in touch," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "Enjoy the rest of your Disney vacation." With that, I turned to Laura, whose face was a ruin of tears and anger. "Laura, I am so sorry. You deserved none of this. My priority now is protecting the children, all of them. If you need anything at all, please call me." I then looked at Helen and Richard, my former in-laws. "Helen, Richard, I truly am sorry for bringing this to your doorstep. You both have always been good to me and the children. I'll make sure Emma and Jake still get to see you. You're innocent in all of this." Their tearful nods were the only response. I gathered Emma and Jake, who were now openly sobbing. "Come on, kids. Daddy's going to take you somewhere quiet." As I led them away, I glanced back one last time. Marcus was slumped in his chair, head in his hands, his career and marriage incinerated. Sarah was still weeping, staring at the divorce papers as if they were a death sentence. The public revenge was complete. The exposure was total. And the fallout was just beginning. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind of chaos and controlled precision. I took Emma and Jake back to our villa, where I had already arranged for a trusted sitter, a college student I had vetted, to be waiting. She was briefed that there had been a family emergency and that the children were upset. My priority was getting them away from the scene and comforting them. They cried themselves to sleep, exhausted and confused, their little worlds upended. Back at the restaurant, the scene I'd left behind would have been a maelstrom. I could almost hear the furious whispers, the horrified exclamations, the righteous anger of Marcus and Laura's families. Frank, Marcus's father-in-law, was a man of immense pride and old-school values. The public humiliation, the betrayal of his trust, the revelation that his potential successor was a cheating liar, that would cut him deeper than any financial loss. My phone started ringing almost immediately. First, Laura. I answered. Her voice was raw, choked with tears and rage. "David, I don't know what to do. My whole life, he just destroyed it. I can't believe it." "I know, Laura," I said softly, my voice firm. "Take a deep breath. You're stronger than you think. I've already set things in motion. My lawyer, Eleanor Vance, will be in touch with you. She's excellent. She can help you navigate this. You deserve justice, Laura, and your kids deserve stability." "Thank you, David." "God, thank you," she whispered, and then disconnected. I felt a surge of grim satisfaction. Laura, the true victim here, was now aligned with me, or at least against the villains. Next came a furious text from Sarah. "You are sick. You're going to ruin US. This is insane. I hate you." I simply blocked her number. There was nothing left to say. Marcus tried calling. Too. I let it go to voicemail. His message was a pathetic mix of pleading and threats. "David, please, man, let's talk. Don't do this. You're destroying everything. My job, my family, everything. You can't just throw away our friendship for this." I scoffed. Friendship? He'd burned that bridge years ago. The next morning, the legal proceedings began in earnest. Eleanor Vance was swift and ruthless. Within 24 hours, Temporary restraining orders were filed against Sarah, limiting her contact with the children to supervised visits only. The legal argument was strong. Her documented history of deception, her disregard for the children's actual whereabouts, and the highly public, emotionally traumatic nature of the exposure event demonstrated an unstable environment potentially harmful to the children. A court date was set for an emergency custody hearing. For Marcus, the fallout was even more immediate and catastrophic. Frank, true to his word, had fired him on the spot. But it wasn't just termination. Frank's company was a tight-knit, family-run business with deep roots in the community. Word spread like wildfire. Marcus's reputation was not just damaged, it was utterly obliterated. He was branded a cheat, a liar, a man who betrayed both his wife and his benefactor. Key clients, many of whom had relationships directly with Frank, began pulling contracts, citing moral clauses or simply a desire not to be associated with such public scandal. Within days, Marcus was not only unemployed, but his professional network had evaporated. His name was mud in the industry. The Thompson family, once pillars of the local community, were now mired in scandal. Frank's sisters and cousins, who had witnessed the scene at the California Grill, were furious and ostracized Marcus. His own mother, utterly mortified, barely spoke to him. Sarah's parents, Helen and Richard, were heartbroken. Helen called me, her voice thick with tears. "David, I don't know what to say. We had no idea. We loved you like a son. How could Sarah do this?" I reiterated that I bore them no ill will and that they would always be welcome to see Emma and Jake. They were victims too, in a way, caught in their daughter's web of lies. Sarah, unable to reach me, turned to her parents for support. But even they were disgusted. They opened their home to her, but the dynamic had shifted. Their disappointment was palpable. They provided shelter, but little comfort. Sarah, accustomed to a life of relative ease and my financial support, now faced the stark reality of her choices. Her part-time graphic design work wasn't enough to sustain her lifestyle, much less mount a serious legal defense. The children, Emma and Jake, were resilient, as children often are, but also deeply affected. I had them in therapy immediately, helping them process the changes and understand that their parent separation was not their fault. I explained it to them in age-appropriate terms. Mommy and Daddy have big problems that only adults can fix. We both love you very much, and that will never change. They missed Sarah, but the stability I now provided, free from the tension and lies, was beginning to sink in. Laura, meanwhile, was experiencing her own tempest. Marcus, jobless and facing Laura's fury, lashed out. There were arguments, accusations. Their children, caught in the crossfire, were distraught. Laura, however, began to find a quiet strength. She moved quickly, filing for divorce from Marcus with Eleanor's guidance. Her family, particularly Frank, rallied around her. Frank, devastated by Marcus's betrayal, made it clear that he would support Laura fully, financially and emotionally. He offered her a position within his company, giving her a path to rebuild her life and provide for her children. It was a gesture of love and atonement from a father whose trust had been shattered. The news spread beyond our immediate circles. Social media, of course, played its part. While I hadn't posted anything directly, the story, so dramatic and public, was inevitably discussed and dissected. Someone at the restaurant must have recorded it, or word spread through the tight-knit Disney community, or simply through the gossip networks of our friends and acquaintances. Anonymous messages of support from me and Laura started trickling in. Some were from mutual friends who had quietly suspected something was off with Sarah and Marcus. Others were from strangers, empathizing with the pain of betrayal. Sarah and Marcus tried to control the narrative, to spin it as David's unhinged revenge, but the overwhelming evidence, coupled with Frank's unequivocal disavowal of Marcus, made their attempts futile. Their reputations were in tatters. Their social circles evaporated. They became pariahs. Invitations stopped. Phone calls went unanswered. They were the subjects of whispers and judgmental stares. Their lives, once intertwined in deceit, began to diverge in humiliation. Marcus, unable to find work, descended into a spiral of bitterness and self-pity. Sarah, stripped of her assumed security and facing a brutal custody battle, became increasingly desperate. The fallout was not just a temporary inconvenience. It was a permanent scar, a complete reshaping of their existence. And it was exactly what they deserved. The months that followed were not without pain, but they were also marked by a profound sense of healing and empowerment. The divorce from Sarah was finalized quickly, largely due to the irrefutable evidence. The court granted me full legal and physical custody of Emma and Jake, with Sarah receiving only supervised visitation, a stark testament to the judge's view of her parental judgment. The financial settlement was equitable, recognizing her adultery and my sole responsibility for the children. I moved forward with dignity, not just as a wronged husband, but as a devoted father. Emma and Jake, supported by consistent therapy and a stable home environment, began to thrive again. They understood, in their own way, that their dad had done everything to keep them safe and loved. Our home became a sanctuary of peace, free from the lies and emotional manipulation that had unknowingly permeated it for so long. We established new routines, filled with laughter, bedtime stories, and weekend adventures that were truly just for us. The bond with my children deepened in a way I never thought possible. They were my reason, my ultimate victory. Laura and I developed a new, stronger friendship, one built on shared trauma and mutual respect. We leaned on each other, processing the immense pain of being betrayed by the people we had loved and trusted. We had weekly coffee dates, often bringing our kids together for play dates. Our children, now half-siblings in a sense through shared pain, found comfort and camaraderie in each other. It was beautiful to watch them heal together. Laura, under Frank's guidance, blossomed at his company. She immersed herself in the business, proving herself to be not just capable but exceptional. She found a renewed purpose and a fierce independence. Her divorce from Marcus was also finalized, and she emerged with a solid financial standing and full custody of her children. She eventually moved into a beautiful new house, a fresh start for her and her kids, leaving Marcus to grapple with the ruins of his own making. Frank, seeing her strength and dedication, eventually designated her as a successor, a poetic justice that Marcus could only stew over from the sidelines. Marcus Thompson's life spiraled. Unemployable in his previous field, ostracized by his family, and divorced by Laura, he moved away, reportedly taking odd jobs to scrape by. The last I heard, he was living in a small, run-down apartment across the state, his once promising career and family shattered. He was just a shell of the man he once was, a direct consequence of his actions. Sarah's fate was equally bleak. Without my financial support or a strong support system from her family, her life became a struggle. Her graphic design work offered minimal income, and she often defaulted on her few payments. The supervised visits with the children were strained, often ending in tears and arguments when she tried to manipulate them or complain about her circumstances. My lawyer was always vigilant, documenting every missed visit, every emotional outburst, ensuring there was no opportunity for her to regain unsupervised access. She faded into obscurity, a cautionary tale of narcissism and self-destruction. I moved on with my life, not just healed, but stronger and wiser. The experience taught me invaluable lessons about trust, about self-worth, and about the quiet power of standing up for what's right. I didn't seek revenge out of hatred, but out of a desperate need for justice and to protect the innocent. I found healing in rebuilding, in focusing on my children, and in nurturing the genuine connections that remained. There was a quiet strength in knowing that I had faced the darkest betrayal and emerged intact, my integrity uncompromised. The wound had healed, leaving a scar, but it was a scar of survival, a mark of resilience. My life was now rich with authentic love, genuine friendship, and the boundless joy of my children. The bitter taste of revenge eventually faded, replaced by the sweet savor of peace. And so, my story ends not with rage, but with liberation. I looked at the world with clear eyes, no longer afraid of betrayal, because I knew I had the strength to confront it, to dismantle it, and to rebuild something far more beautiful from the ashes.